welcome to the Tales of Team Trinity podcast, the show about two childhood best friends discussing paranormal events and what lies deep beneath the other side. So grab yourself a nice warm cup of coffee, maybe a tea, or even a nice hot chocolate, and let's get spooky. My name is Katie. I am 26 years young. I do IT for a living. What I would like to do is work my way into doing something more in the nursing field or the medical field. I feel like I was put on this earth to help people, and that's really where my heart is. So it's been a journey. I'm still, trying to find my way through this universe and see what the cards hold for me. So this podcast, it's really to discuss, our thoughts on the paranormal, different investigations that we've seen, maybe even discussing cases. And it can be more than just ghosts or demons. It can even be aliens or, we're going to start out with what we know best, which are the ghosts and that type of paranormal activity. But I'm sure we will make our way through it, and you guys can always comment or reach out to us. Let us know what you're interested in hearing about. We do love feedback, and please bear with us. We are using a Discord for our podcast here. We did get a nice mic for today, but still, when you're recording through Discord, there is that quality barrier that it has to kind of fine-tune through. But we're going to work our way in getting some better equipment eventually. So I do thank you for bearing with us here. So what really got me into the paranormal background, I should say, for me anyway, is I am a preacher's granddaughter. And, even though my grandpa, preached about heaven and angels, my grandpa always said that the one thing Jesus preached more about than anything was hell. And that demons are a real thing too. They can take the shape and form of anything, and I've always found it very, very inspiring. I know that sounds kind of weird to say that, but it is like another thing that I just wanted to learn. I wanted to get deeper. Is there proof of this? And we can definitely talk about more of like that history, like maybe what our families have shared in the future or in future episodes. But I'm going to go ahead and hand this off over to my best friend, Vannah.
So, as you said, I'm Vannah. I'm 26 years old as well. I am actually a warehouse worker, but I went to school for graphic design, and I'm actually currently working on designing us a logo for our podcast. And with my current job, I've actually found ways to put to use what I went to school for in graphic design. And that's really what I have a passion for. And my kind of background of paranormal is what got me stuck on paranormal stuff is I used to read all of the Haunted Ohio books when I was a kid. And finding out, like, the state you're from is considered one of the most haunted ones, and there's an entire book series about it from Haunted Ohio 1 to I think maybe 8. I think there's actually maybe 8 books about it.
Is there really?
Yeah. Finding out it's like one of the most haunted states, it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and I think I mentioned this earlier when we were putting together this outline here. When you're from Ohio, there ain't much. There isn't much to look for besides the cornfields next to you, unless you're talking about the children of the corn. There's a little something paranormal there. So it would make sense why we're so interested in this type of thing. Me and Vannah, we met in 6th grade in our hometown, which we come from good old Franklin, Ohio. Shout out to any locals that are listening. And we went, I think at that school was Laura Farrell. We've been inseparable ever since. Sure, we have our arguments from time to time, but she don't kill me and I haven't killed her yet, so. But if you do, reach out to me with some EVP sessions. All right. So the interesting thing, too, is the year we met each other in the 6th grade, there was actually a museum across the street from our school, and it was known as the General Harding Museum. And I'm just going to pull up some information we found here on it historically. Actually, let me back up a little bit. Let's talk a little bit about Franklin first. See, we're new here. Bear with us. What kind of information do you know, Vannah, about the background?
Well, I know Franklin was founded by General William C. Schenck in 1769, and the settlement was actually named for Benjamin Franklin.
Mm-hmm.
And Franklin actually did not become like a full-fledged city until the 1950s, 1951 to be exact. And Franklin's first mayor's name was Dr. Absalom Death, and he was elected at a tavern meeting in 1837. And he went on to become a director of a medical college right here in Cincinnati, Ohio, as well. And in Franklin's history, there have been 2 doctors named Dr. Death.
That is crazy. And it really kind of goes with the theme here with death. But even the first name, Absalom Death, that's pretty cool. Pretty interesting, too, for the mayor to be a doctor. Yeah, definitely. And there's a lot of, I shouldn't say a lot, but there are some interesting areas in Franklin or around Franklin, close around, that could be deemed as haunted. With some, places historical as Franklin. Why not? Now I can get back to what I was saying about the little museum behind or across the street from our 6th grade school. And it was, like I was saying before, it was the General Harding Museum. Major General Edwin Forrest Harding was appointed to West Point by William Howard Taft, and graduated in 1909 with a classmate, George S. Patton. Harding served in the Army from 1909 to 1946, commanding the 32nd Infantry Division in World War II. The general retired to his boyhood home on Park Avenue and left the home to the Franklin Area Historical Society, my hillbilly came out there, upon his death in 1970. Since that has been changed to a museum, I remember one day in 6th grade, pretty sure it was towards the end of our year, or one of the field days we had, our school decided that we were going to walk from our school across the street over to the museum. And inside the museum, it definitely looked historical. They had all the furniture, the beds, everything. We were allowed to walk upstairs, but not in certain rooms. It's been said, though, in those rooms specifically that we weren't allowed to walk into because it could be, the floor could fall through, or it could be a safety hazard. We have heard, or people have claimed they have heard footsteps in those rooms, which is pretty bizarre if no one's, up in the rooms of that place. So yeah, I thought that was very close to home when we first met, very interesting. I definitely think, the paranormal is what definitely has made us closer as best friends, for sure, our interest. And then, speaking of schools, we even have, I didn't even think, too, about the high school as well, the auditorium in the high school. But Franklin Junior High, to be exact, though, there's been some stories about that. But again, I'm going to refer to Ms. Vannah here because I'm not the greatest with the history here, and I don't want to give you guys the wrong information. So go on ahead and take it over.
The current junior high school in Franklin was built in 1921, and it housed 6 different grades, and those grades were grades 6 through 12. But then in 1948, it became the 4-year high school until 1954. Another school was built literally right next door to the junior high, which, if you leave the junior high, there's a little bridge you can walk over to get to the other school, which is known as Hampton Bennett. And the current junior high remained the high school for grades 10 through 12 until 1969, when the current high school was built, and then the then high school became what is now known as Franklin Junior High, housing 7th and 8th grades. So it goes from housing 6 different grades to only housing 2.
That's insane. I can only imagine, kids basically going to the same school as someone graduating the next day. I mean, that's kind of bizarre to encompass. I also heard in the old junior high, too, I've heard some stories. Again, this was junior high, so kids could talk, too. But with it being, being the old high school, they did have an auditorium in the old high school, which when we were there for junior high, it actually was used as a library, and they kind of redid it, but it still had its old structure. So, like, for instance, the library itself, when you walked in, was on the first floor, and it actually declined down towards a stage, and there's, old school stage, wooden floor, even had, I think, the molding and the cherubs in the wall carved in it. And then if you turned around from facing outwards from the stage, there was a second story in the auditorium where it came out and it dipped over the first floor, almost like, a 2-story opera house, if you think about it. And that second floor, you could access from, that second floor you could actually access from our 3rd floor hallway in the junior high. And at the time, they were using it for storage, like storing the older desks, chairs that we weren't using anymore. But there was no way to get in there, at least not for us children at the time. It was locked or blocked off. I know the doors on that 3rd floor, we definitely couldn't get into it, and they were by our lockers. But there's been stories said that people have heard the furniture moving and scooting around on its own, especially people, on the bottom floor where the actual library is. That's all open, and they say that they can hear that. So I thought that was really interesting, and you actually, talking about this actually reminded me, Vannah, and this definitely was not in our outline here. Our new high school that you and I went to school with, I heard a lot of talk, and this is kind of dark, that wasn't there a kid that hung himself in the auditorium of our school? I heard he had taken chains and actually hung himself in, the pit crew area, and there were stories about that, too. I don't have much information on that, but that just reminded me of another haunted place in Franklin. So yeah, I thought it was very interesting. And then another school close to Franklin was Poasttown Elementary. It has a lot of historical background about that as well.
Yeah, so in 1910, there was before Poasttown Elementary School sits on the ground that it sits on now, there was a crash that was considered to be one of the worst railroad crashes in Butler County's history. That involved passenger train and a freight train. And it killed 24 people and injured 35 more. And it was said to, the land that Poasttown Elementary School sits on currently was said to have been used as a triage area for the wreck. So all those that died in the wreck, and then you build a school on top of it, you can make for some...
Yeah, I would say Poasttown Elementary, it's about 10 minutes away from Franklin. To 10, 15.
Yeah.
And it's right outside of Middletown.
Yep.
And I remember growing up, it used to be next to an old IGA that's no longer an IGA. It's a Dollar General now, I think.
Yeah.
But I remember, like, did you say Dollar Generals are all over the world?
Yep.
I remember, like, during Halloween time, for a while, they were having haunted houses that you could pay, to be spooked and stuff during the Halloween season. And then they quit, and it was vacant again for years. Later to find out that Post Town, they actually allow people to come in and investigate. And I think it's, you were mentioning earlier, Vannah, that it's been on TV. There were people have.
Yeah. So it's one of the few places that's only been on TV once and investigated by only one set of professional paranormal investigators, where other places, like bigger places like prisons or old asylums and stuff, have been visited by multiple different shows like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, like Tennessee Wraith Chasers of ghost asylums and stuff. But Post Town's only been investigated by one, and it was a group of 4 friends.
That is crazy. But what was it you were saying? People heard kids' voices? Is that what you said earlier?
I've heard kids' voices at Post Town and desks being dragged across the floors and stuff.
So typical for a school, right? Or a haunted school, should I say. So we're in this area of Post Town. So to get to Post Town, you have to go through another town called Carlisle. Carlisle is literally part of Franklin Township. You're over our bridge and you're there. And there is actually a haunted road in Carlisle. This haunted road, we've had an experience on, and even my mother was in a tragic car accident on this road. So the legend is that on Morning Star Road at midnight, even though it's already scary enough, if you stop and roll down your windows or flash your lights, you will either see a lady, I believe in white is what the legend says, a lady in white walking towards you or behind your car, or you'll hear kids screaming. The legend says the reason why this has happened or is happening is there's a little Metro Park right across the street from it. And from that Metro Park, there was a house and it had caught on fire. And this woman, she had 3 kids, and they were all on fire. She ran down the hill trying to go save her babies. And yes, it is a pretty big hill. And I believe she had slipped and broke her neck. And now she's stuck looking around for these babies. If you go to that Metro Park during the day and you look at the area, it's overgrown at this point, but from across the street, some people have reported that the old chimney is still there. I know when you and I had went through Vannah and done, it was not an official investigation. We were with another friend who was interested in our paranormal group, but you can still see the foundation. It's concrete foundation stairs that lead up to nowhere, and it's kind of eerie because it really resonates with the story that we've been told here. My mother, she was in high school, and she let her friend drive her new car. Let me take a step back. When I said my grandpa was a pastor, my grandpa also believed that you had spiritual gifts. I 110% and the rest of my family believe he had the gift of premonition. my grandpa pleaded for my mom not to go out that night. She was still in high school. And he said something bad was going to happen. That night, my mom had her little sister's friend drive her car. I don't know if she was peer pressured or, hey, you're not cool if you don't let her, drive your car. But she had lost control, and they had crashed head on into a tree. My mom said went through a windshield, and it happened to be right in the area where that house is. So, though they didn't see anything, I feel like there's a lot of bad juju there. And I think you can definitely attest with me how old were we when we went with your family member? Were we still in high school?
Yeah.
Were we like 17?
Mm-hmm.
And one of your family members agreed to let us go down this road. They drove us, and I think she screamed. What did she scream out of the van? Do you remember?
I believe she actually screamed, "We found your kids," or something like that, and then we heard her scream, and
yes, the driver said, "I ain't sticking around for this," and stepped on it.
But then there was also on one night of Halloween, me and you were just driving down the road as a byway to get from the one side to the other side quicker than having to go all the way around and stuff. So we were just using it literally just to pass through to the other side.
Right.
And we weren't even looking for paranormal anything at that time, and we both swear
we saw that black figure, wasn't it?
Coming up close enough to where the house stood, we saw a black figure.
And we stood around and it was gone.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was terrifying. Yeah. I think we were upset that day because it was raining on Halloween and we couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember that pretty vividly. Oh, wow. Good times, good times. Another location is the Sorg Mansion. The Sorg Mansion is in Middletown, and it was basically in 1864, Paul J. Sorg met his colleague John, I'm going to butcher this, Ayer, and a German-born tobacco roller in Cincinnati. Ayer could make tobacco, but he couldn't keep books. For his part, Sorg knew nothing about tobacco, but he was good at bookkeeping. The two men organized a firm for the sorry, it's late and I'm a little tired. To manufacture tobacco, starting a plant in Cincinnati. In 1869, they partnered with another tobacco firm in Cincinnati. One of the new partners lived in Middletown, Ohio, and urged the newly formed company, Wilson Sorg and Company, to relocate there and a new plant that was constructed. Sorg soon sold his share. Sorg and Ayer soon sold his. I can't talk. Okay, that is a tongue twister, ladies and gentlemen. Twister, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks, Vannah. I really appreciate your support here. Anyway, they sold their share to the business and immediately formed another company, P.J. Sorg Tobacco Company, to manufacture cut filler and plug tobacco. One of their brand names was the biggest and the best. This new firm they built up to become one of the largest of its type in the world, and Sorg became Middletown's first multi-millionaire. With that sweet little bit of money, they ended up making he ended up building a mansion right there in Middletown called Sorg Mansion. The main house comprises of over 13,000 square feet and 35 rooms, in each bedroom having its own fireplace. The tiled vestibule is opens to a large grand hall and with the main staircase. There's even been rumored that underneath, well, not just the Sorg Mansion, but all of historical Middletown has tunnels going through it, and I believe it is believed that it is related to the Underground Railroad. So the story for that, for what makes this paranormal, is one night a singer at the opera mysteriously vanished in the tunnels, and all that was found was a red dress she wore that night. Those who work late at night have heard a woman singing, and some claim to see the ghost of a woman in a red dress in the makeup room. I also know that for a while, Sorg had been popular for selling. They used to make the mansion an apartment building, and people stayed there. Right now, it's currently closed, and I'm not sure why. So it's very interesting to find out. Another place. So we're getting a little further away, but do you remember Burr Breaker Bridge?
Yeah.
That's up in Gratis.
Yep.
Long story for that. Well, it's not a long story. It's an old wooden bridge.
It's an old wooden covered bridge.
Yeah. Can we get a date on that? Let me check.
I believe it's 1867, maybe.
Let me see here. I know you're looking into something for me here. Forgive us. I know.
It's let's see.
Burr Breaker Bridge. 1887. Yep.
Oh.
So I believe in Vannah, please correct me if I start to tell the story a little bit incorrect here. It is believed that there was a group of teenagers flying down the road on their prom night, and Burr Breaker Bridge, it's a big, long, curvy hill going downward.
And it goes over Samstrong Creek.
Yeah.
Which is a little creek right below it. And actually, the story from it is actually from the 1930s, and you are right. It was a group of teenagers. They were returning home from a party when they crashed on the bridge, and they were thrown everywhere. And what caused the death toll to remain a mystery prior to that, because they never knew how many people were actually in it, and one was thought to have gone missing when he had actually been in the accident. And they searched for his body at the scene of the crash, and it remained hidden in the brush for years because they didn't think to look in the brushes or didn't realize that they got thrown that far. And it was hidden in the brushes for years before being washed away. And ever since then, people have experienced things while driving on the inside of the bridge, as it is a covered bridge. They've said that their car engines have died, and they've heard tapping sounds on the car windows, and it's presumably the lost boy trying his best to be found. Because, he doesn't realize what happened or something. You never know. Because coming home from a party, you never know. He could have fell asleep and, they crashed, or
was it raining?
Right.
Yeah, definitely. And we've actually investigated there. I don't think we've gotten any hard evidence.
No.
We've even tried to turn your car off in the middle of the bridge. Nothing. And not too far away from that, or did you have anything else to say on that subject?
A couple stories. I've read a couple different stories of a couple different people's encounters and stuff, and some people will say that you will see strange lights or something, and then some say that at a certain point in the night, if you go to the bridge, you will actually see an outline in the bridge of where the car went through the wall of the bridge that night.
I think we looked for that in one of our investigations, too, if I'm correct. And not too far from that, there's another very well-known bridge. You guys may have heard the story before, because it's actually a pretty popular ghost story. Fudge Road, also known as Crybaby Bridge.
And which is there's an interesting fact with those two. Ohio is full of
Crybaby
bridges. Like, this one is the one closest to us, but like up near Columbus area and stuff, there's like 4 or 5 different ones in 2 or 3 different counties.
And similar stories.
And, yeah, they're all very similar stories.
And Crybaby Bridge, or Fudge Road, is a private road. A lot of farmhouses are on it. And it's a wavy road too, just like Burr Breaker. And what it's been believed is the original issue with Crybaby Bridge was there was a woman, I believe, that had her baby. They were in a carriage, and they were on Fudge Road. Don't know where they were headed, but somehow the carriage lost control on the bridge, and the woman and her baby fell out, and they died. From that, a lot of people, locals in the area, have formulated saying, I think, "We have your baby, we've got your baby," and you say it 3 times, and it's expected that you'll either hear a baby cry or she will appear. Fudge Road, Fudge Road in itself has added some bad rep with that as well. There has been a lot in the past where the Ku Klux Klan had did some I want to say burning, but there has also been some with ritualistic things of satanic worship happening. I can say that my uncle can kind of attest to one of those things. But before I get into that, some of the things that might happen or has been said to happen to trigger that is driving onto the bridge, turning your car off, flashing your lights 3 times, and you can see the baby, or not the baby, the mother as well from there. There's also been a saying that if you put powder on the back of your trunk on your car and you turn your car off and get out, that when you return back to your car, there'll be handprints in the powder, looking like several handprints. But back to my uncle's story. My uncle was driving out in Gratis, and he drove onto Fudge Road, and he hit a spot where the bridge was, and he saw light flickering from under the bridge. My uncle kind of pulled off to the side to see what was going on. He's like, "Is the forest on fire? What's going on here?" And he looked under the bridge, and there were chickens hanging upside down. At least that's what he told me. And there was a group of people their faces covered in cloaks. They immediately looked and saw him above the bridge, and they began chasing him. My uncle got into his truck and drove away as fast as he could. He was shot at, and he was also chased by a Cadillac. This has been said that more than once that people have been chased by this Cadillac off this road and shot at. The road now is no longer open to the public. Since, I want to say, before we graduated high school, maybe a year before that, they closed it down.
Yeah.
And I think it was because it was
No, I think it's because
condemned.
The bridge and stuff is starting to
Become
not
dangerous.
be able to hold
the weight.
multiple cars going over at multiple different times and stuff. So.
Sure. And I know you and I used to go down there quite a bit, and we can say there are bullet holes in the signs.
Yep.
We can also say that on the way down there, you do pass one house with 2 Cadillacs, I think one black one, one white one, in their driveway. And when we got there, it was kind of degrading to look at that bridge because my aunt used to take us across it to scare us when we were younger. But people had painted pentagrams, spray painted, and all sorts of like cuss words, and it was very disrespectful to see that. I mean, I know kids will be kids, but we've done some investigation on that bridge, and I think the only thing we can say we found was when we were leaving one day from trying to investigate the bridge. Our friend was driving the car, and she wasn't the best driver in the world and went down the wrong side of the road, of Fudge Road, and she went to turn around on this one narrow gravel road. One way, narrow road. And it's overgrowth, like the side of the road has overgrowth. So her trying to back, and she had a long Chevy Lumina car. So her trying to back out, and I thought we were going to get stuck for a minute. But we ended up getting turned around to where you and I believe, were in the back seat, or you may have been in the front seat, I don't know. Our windows were down, it was in the summer, and as we went to go back into drive, we heard something scream in the woods.
Yep.
I can't say it was an animal.
Right.
I can't, but it sounded like either a female scream or a young child scream. No, our friend didn't hear it, but you and I, like, as soon as we heard it, we made eye contact.
Yeah.
At that point, it was too real. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a lot of what our area close to us has to offer. There are a lot more areas within the county within 20-minute to 30, maybe 45-minute drive.
45-minute drives.
And we're definitely planning on making our next episode about some of those areas. We're going to attack Ohio, and then we're going to expand. So just keep tuning in with us. We'll get better as we go. We thank you for your patience.